Good evening, everybody. My name is Pat Marcarelli. I'm the president of the Westbrook Council of Beach Associations. Thank you for attending tonight's forum. Before we get started, just a couple of things. Tonight's program was originally slated to be 1 hour. However, with the overwhelming turnout of questions this year that were submitted to us and our new technology, we're going to be able to maybe run with the same format, but may run over the hour for just a little bit. But we're going to try to keep that same time slot best as we can. In the best interest of time, also, if a candidate does not have a rebuttal, please refrain, stand down so we can save more time and get questions in of interest to the public. First off, I want to thank the staff here, the Oxford Academy. It's a beautiful little facility that we have here, and for assisting us, helping us with getting things set up with tonight's wonderful venue. Thanks to our friends at Valley Shore Cable TV. Thank you. Valley Shore Cable TV for their hard work in providing the coverage and coordinate with Oxford Academy staff so this program could not only be broadcast live over the regular channels, Comcast and Frontier, with the new technology and everything we have, probably about the first time now, we're able to stream across Roku, the Fire Stick, and all your streaming devices, your phone, and everything. So nice job, guys. Thank you. And to our council members for your help in organizing tonight's events. Our candidates, thank you all for showing up, and you're showing your interest in getting involved with this forum and your dedicated service to the town of Westbrook. It's just great that we're able to pull this off. Just a few words about the Council of Beaches. As many of you know, we consist of representatives from 17 of the neighborhoods throughout community associations throughout the town of Westbrook. We have representatives pretty much on virtually every town board, commission, and committee. The council strives to serve the best interests of the entire Westbrook community. We work with businesses, governments, agencies on both local and state levels. Also, support of our education system and our town's young people, as well as those residents with extra needs, is a top priority for the council. We try to strive and please everybody here in town. Just two quick announcements, and just give me a second. I have a letter that I like to read. This is from a student at Westbrook High School. This evening we will have a discussion of the issues of our town, our issues that our town faces between the red team and the blue team. But in a few weeks, the red and the blue teams will both wear purple, which is the color of Alzheimer's, and engage in a benefit softball game for the benefit of the Alzheimer's Association. This event is being organized by Jamie Sacco, a Westbrook High School senior who cannot be with us tonight, but in her words has said, "This charity means a lot to me and has touched my family. My great-grandmother battled Alzheimer's and later died from it, along with my grandfather who is currently suffering with dementia. This softball game will be between the town Democrats and Republicans right before the election. I feel that this event is a great opportunity to donate to a wonderful cause, which also brings the community together. Aside from the softball game, there will be raffle, music, food, and other fun activities for people of all ages. Our goal is to make this one of the best events to end off the year. So please join us on October 23rd at 2 p.m. at Ted Lane Field here in Westbrook. The Council of Beaches will also be monitoring this. We will post everything on our website, and I know the town will also be putting this on their marquees, and so will Valley Shore TV. So that was just one thing. And then secondly and lastly, the Council of Beaches, sponsors food drives and clothing drives every year. And we have our next Stuff a Cruiser will be at the Westbrook Outlets. It'll be December 4th. It's going to be on our website. It's 11 to 2 on Saturday, December 4th. So please, again, follow our website. We're up to date on basically everything in town. With that all being said, my time here is done. Thank you. I'm going to turn the program over to our moderator for this evening, a lifelong friend of mine, Alan Riggs. Alan, the floor is yours. And just one other thing. Again, with the Oxford Academy, as far as their masks and stuff go, because there are no students in the building and there's school policy for the students, if you're uncomfortable with your mask and you would like to remove it and you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and do so. Okay, and the candidates have already been made aware of that as well. Okay, sit back, enjoy the evening, and let's learn something tonight.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It is an honor to be here and be part of this debate, part of this process that we hold true and dear to our hearts here in America. Pat was almost right when he said longtime friends. We're old enough, it's been long time friends. There was only one house between us when we were growing up, and we both followed into the fire service, had a career there. So yes, we've known each other for a long time, and I guess that's why he hooked me into this. This is my first time as moderator, so please bear with me. So on behalf of the Westbrook Council of Beaches, welcome to this candidates forum. My name is Alan Riggs, and I have been asked to serve as your moderator for the evening. We're delighted to have with us this evening all of the candidates for the offices of First and Second Selectmen. The introductions will be from left to right. Number 1 for First Selectman, Chet Bayalicki. Number 2, John Hall III. Second Selectman, Joseph Campbell. And also Second Selectman, Vincent Chantilly. The rules for tonight's forum, together with the several questions of particular interest to the residents of Westbrook and the Council of Beaches, were submitted to all of the candidates 1 week prior to tonight's forum at the same time. Our timekeeper for this forum will be Mary Jane Monahan, she'll work hard to keep me in line and the candidates. Before starting with opening statements, I'd like to urge you to all follow one basic protocol. Please do not applaud during the forum, as it will simply take time and prevent the audience from asking more questions and hearing more of the candidates. There will be 2 exceptions to this rule. One is right now, as we give a round of applause for our candidates. Each candidate may take an opening statement of 1 minute, and the first opening statement will be Mr. Hall.
Thank you. I would first like to thank the Westbrook Council of Beaches, Oxford Academy, and our moderator this evening for organizing and hosting this forum. I am a lifelong Westbrook resident. I am a 12-year incumbent on the Board of Selectmen, where I have focused on building, passing, and implementing fiscally responsible budgets of approximately $10 million annually. I served 10 years on the Westbrook Foundation, 7 as chair, where I helped to grow that organization into a multi-million-dollar operation, including through the 2008 recession. I served on Westbrook ZBA for 27 years, 25 as chairman, where I worked with countless Westbrook residents and businesses to accommodate their proposals and projects and see them to fruition. Together with my wife Bonnie, we own and operate Artec Water Systems Incorporated and Maple Breeze Farm LLC. As a business owner, I know what it takes to manage employees and also the responsibility that comes with signing the front of a paycheck. I also serve as president of the American Milking Devon Cattle Association in the United States and Canada. I have served 25 years on the Middlesex County Farm Bureau, many as president, and the Connecticut Farm Bureau Board of Directors and Executive Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Next, we'll have Mr. Campbell. You have 1 minute. I'm sorry, Mr. Bayalicki. Told you she'd keep me in line.
Thank you, and once again, thank you for having us here tonight. I'm really very pleased and openly, my heart goes out to all of you for having us. Most of you know me through the Westbrook Public School District, and I'm not going to talk about my years of service because years and numbers really don't mean too much to me at this point in time, running for First Selectman. What matters to me is about getting a job done and my past record of moving students in the school district, the high school district, forward, not only in the state of Connecticut, but nationally to California and even to Baltimore, Maryland, as one of the only public schools invited, for a conference. I do believe that I possess the qualities that are necessary to bring forth change and growth within our town. And those type of qualities, I list as listening skills, communication skills, finding solutions and interacting with individuals, Transparency is very important as first selectman. We need to be open and honest and be out front with everything that we do. So these types of skills I've been exhibiting within the Westbrook Public Schools. It's taken us beyond what people said that we possibly could ever do with our students, and I promise to bring it forth to the town of Westbrook if I am elected first selectman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Chantilly?
Thank you. I'm Vince Chantilly, Democratic candidate for the Board of Selectmen. I'm a former small business owner. In my 20s, I sold my landscaping business to go to college, got my bachelor's in business administration. From then, I went into information technology. I've spent over 20 years implementing complex systems, managing large projects and budgets, and I plan on bringing that expertise to move the town forward. You know, like many, I love this town, and I see great potential in what it could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I'm sorry, Mr. Chantilly. Mr. Campbell?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I have been a 30-year resident of Westbrook. My daughters are alumni of the Westbrook High Schools. My wife, Julie, and I are parishioners at St. Mark's Church. I served on the Board of Ed from 2005 to 2011. I chaired an ad hoc town charter committee in 2006-2007. I am retired from the Department of Corrections. I retired in 2016. My last 4 years were in a supervisory position. I even returned from April 2020 to May 2021 due to the strain on staffing because of COVID. I'm currently the boys soccer high school coach and boys basketball assistant coach at Westbrook Middle School, and I'm the softball head coach at Westbrook High School. And Julie and I are currently in our 4th year at Julie's Cup of Joe in downtown Westbrook, a little coffee shop thriving in a place many thought not possible. I have a lot of access to a lot of people that can only serve the board well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. We'll start with the first selectman candidate as chosen by previous draw. We will then follow with the protocol as established by the council and agreed to with the random drawing prior to tonight's meeting. As stated, the Council of Beaches previously submitted to the candidates several questions that are of particular concern to our community, but that may not otherwise have been brought to the candidates' attention. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each of these questions, following which each may have 1 minute of rebuttal. Rebuttal is not required, and the candidates are urged to not rebut when there is no reason to do so, as refraining from unnecessary rebuttals will free up more time for questions from the audience. The order of responding to these questions was determined by the drawing before the meeting. The council may also pose a question of general interest and then open to the floor to questions from the audience if time allows. And the first question for tonight, bear with me. And this will go to, first start with Mr. Hall. The American Rescue Plan Act, passed last March, provides funds for local governments under the Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. Westbrook receives money for 4 categories of permitted uses, including to make necessary investments in projects that improve access to clean drinking water, improve wastewater and stormwater infrastructure systems, and provide access to high-quality broadband services, taking into account resilience to climate change. It is understood that projects using these funds would not include those for which capital project funds have already been earmarked. Our recently adopted Plan of Conservation and the Development, POCD, includes 3 key initiatives, the first of which is to establish a coastal resiliency framework. Possible infrastructure activities identified in this section of the POCD include improving drainage, raising access roads where practical. Are you in favor of using the rescue plan funds for such usage, or are there other priorities that you favor? Again, Mr. Hall.
So the American Rescue Plan money, Westbrook was very benefited by receiving almost $2 million of federal money. We have met with department heads, we've met with commission chairs, and we met last week with the public to get input about what projects the public and our employees feel are necessary. As far as coastal resiliency, let me talk about that for a minute. The Planning Commission has been charged and will implement a coastal resiliency plan next year, in the next budget year. It's going to be funded to do a study that's required by the state on coastal resiliency. To me, this is something that the town should pay for and save those funds for other uses, including improvements that are recommended long-term in the plan. But I think this is an opportunity for some regionalism. Westbrook's not the only shore town with this problem. It's all up and down the Connecticut coast. I think we should work with Old Saybrook, Clinton, maybe Madison, hire one consultant and do one regional plan to address this. This is not a unique problem to Westbrook. It's the same, like I said, all up and down the shoreline. I think the opportunity is there to save some money for the town, make a good plan, make it cooperative with the other towns. Don't try to reinvent the wheel, and use some of the money to put some of the recommendations into play, but use some of the other money and some of the other very legitimate requests that we've had. Thank you.
Okay, I've been asked by the TV people, when you do respond, please just turn the microphone towards yourself. If you turn it back and forth, it should work fine. That was Mr. Hall. Mr. Campbell is next. All right, thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Campbell, same question?
Thank you. I more or less would like to second what Mr. Hall has said, and also add that the current Board of Selectmen has reached out to town department chairs and heads of committees, as well as having a town meeting to open it up for ideas for this money, that I guess they're going to have a meeting within the next couple of weeks to discuss prioritizing it. And I'm not sure if I remember seeing much on this particular aspect in those suggestions. Although the plan of conservation and development is extremely important, and my understanding is also going to be mandated by the state of Connecticut, so we're going to be responsible regardless. There are some very, very good and important suggestions that have come forward for the ARPA funds. So,
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Gentili, same question?
Well, I absolutely support, resiliency plan. I think it should be funded. As far as the American Rescue Plan funds, I've gone to both of the meetings, heard a lot of, really important things that need to be funded. I personally think that the priorities for the town should be projects that foster economic development, like the community septic system for our town center. It's come up time and time again in surveys with the residents, and it's one of the major projects that could increase town revenues. Unfortunately, a lot of the suggestions I heard at the American Rescue Plan meetings were things that were underfunded or not funded in previous budgets. The troopers asked for a new patrol car. I know that we bought 3 recently, but when the Council of Beaches asked for the police to be out in force during 4th of July, the reason why we couldn't have as many officers out as we wanted is because the cars were in disrepair. And this is how we ended up getting 3 new cars in 2 years, instead of sticking with the plan of buying one every 2 years. I've gone to most of the Board of Selectmen meetings over the last 2 years, and in the budget season, we again postponed the 2-year plan on the next cruiser, so it's going to be 3 years before we get the next one.
Thank you, Mr. Gentili. And now, Mr. Bialicki.
Thank you. Our plan of conservation and development, the ARPA meeting certainly presented a lot of needs in our town, needs that probably should have been taken care of before this time, but needs such as EMS, community programs, IT, and so on. There was a large list. I really believe that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance need to come together on all these. You know, certainly there's money, or there will be money, or could be money available, you know, in our present budget to take care of these type of items. And I think what the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance need to do is come together in a meeting and try to figure out where they need to lead the town, because we're looking for leaders with these ARPA funds. And we're looking for people to take us forward to see where are our needs for our future and not for just the immediate. Discussion is very important. I know there's money in the 22-23 budget for the Resiliency Capital Plan, you know. I wish there were money now. But as I stated, and I'll continue to state tonight, we need to bring our town committees and commissions together to work together toward the goal of our town. And this is something that I believe we need to do in this particular case as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bialecki. Question number 2. Climate change is not going away. According to the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, Westbrook had 127 homes worth $48.5 million in 2018 that are at risk of chronic flooding as soon as 9 years from now. How would you implement a Westbrook resiliency plan supported by a long-term capital budget plan and secure funding and grants from the state and federal levels to alleviate flooding in our beach communities caused by sea level rise and superstorms? Mr. Campbell, you'll begin this question.
My understanding is that there was a representative from a Florida community.
Turn the mic. I'm sorry. If you remember to turn the microphone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there was a representative from a Florida community dealing with this issue, and this representative has shared with the people of Westbrook some of the things that they've done and some of the issues that they've dealt with. I unfortunately was not able to connect with that video yet. One of my friends has said he's going to send it to me. But I guess one of the things that they've worked on, and I believe we even have, are like floodgates, which has helped. We need to work with other communities. We need to work with our local communities, because it's not just a Westbrook issue. And we need to work with the professionals who know this particular issue, because quite honestly, I don't. But I'm smart enough to talk to the people that do. And then we will plan accordingly to make sure that we're able to fund and give the resources necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Chantilly, if you turn the microphone, please.
Like was said, you know, climate change is important, climate change is real, and it's going to affect this town. I would absolutely support funding, you know, the creation of the resiliency plan in the next budget cycle. To implement the plan, I would make sure that planning has the appropriate staff to secure the funding and grants to move the plan forward. I think since the planner had left, we have been running the planning organization at a bare minimum. And there's a lot of money out there in grants, but it's very competitive. So we need to make sure we have the proper staffing to be ahead of the game, to have shovel-ready projects, because other communities have that, and they're always going to beat us to getting the grants.
Thank you, Mr. Chantilly. Mr. Bialecki.
Thank you. We can't go another year without seriously starting a plan for this. A committee needs to be established this year, and the committee needs to meet with all agencies that are involved. Capital budget spending needs to be established, you know, in order to tackle this issue. Grant writing is primary and the most important aspect of this issue. I just found out on the news there's a flood mitigation assistance program right now for $160 million that's being offered. It started, the application started on September 30th. It ends on, I believe, January 28th of 21. I don't know all the specifics, but it's a grant. We need people to investigate these type of grants. Presently, New Haven and Fairfield County are working on a $54 million grant cooperatively for their flooding issues. Once again, because someone investigated a grant. We need someone on our staff to investigate and coordinate and carry out these grants. We can't neglect our jetties and our groins anymore at the expense of what can happen in the future to try to repair them. We need to collaborate with our towns. We need to collaborate with our neighboring towns. And we know the resiliency is not only, for Westbrook. And I do have a little concern that it's going to be difficult to do this without a full-time town planner. Our past full-time town planner pulled in hundreds of thousands of dollars of grants at a mere salary and benefits. So we need to consider where we're headed with this in our future and who's going to help us pull these grants together, because that's the way most of it is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bialicki. Next, Mr. Hall, please.
To me, this is much larger than a small-town Westbrook issue. This is an issue that's going to involve regional planning. This is an issue that's going to involve the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, FEMA, and a number of other federal agencies. A number of these properties that we're talking about, the very nice houses along the shore, probably wouldn't be allowed to be built where they are today under current zoning. They were placed in floodplains when we weren't concerned about that 50, 60, 70 years ago, long before the time anybody in this room had anything to do with Westbrook management. So we have to solve the problem going forward. And again, that's going to be a regional problem. It's going to be a lot bigger than the town of Westbrook. Noel and I have already been on a number of streets with Army Corps engineers, with FEMA engineers, looking at the problems. A floodgate has been installed in the Grove Beach Point area with some minimal success. Some more of that is going to be looked at. But again, this is a lot more than grant writing. This is a lot to do with Army Corps money, FEMA, and so on. This is a huge project. Yes, we're going to address it with a coastal resiliency plan, but it's going to take a regional effort to get this done.
All right. Thank you, sir. Rebuttals, right?
Yes, these are rebuttals.
This is time for rebuttals, and we'll use the same order if you so choose. Mr. Hall?
I went last.
That was the rebuttal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Campbell's next.
My apologies. Again, she's keeping me in line.
A rebuttal, we didn't have that with the first question.
No, we did not. No, we did not. Would you like to go back to the first question? Does anybody have a rebuttal that they'd like to offer for the first question? I can read it again if you'd like. No? Okay. And again, my apologies. All right, we just had, I'm sorry, now I've lost my place.
You have a rebuttal for questions.
That was okay.
The only rebuttal I have is that the person who has had the most experience on this issue at these tables is John Hall, because he has dealt with this with his 12 years. The person who has had the most experience at these tables is John Hall, because he's been dealing with that issue and many other issues. So many times when I'm dealing with any of these questions and these issues, he was a huge source of information. He's done this, and I trust him, and that's why I think that we'll be able to run the town. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Chantilly, any rebuttal?
No rebuttal, thank you.
All right, gentlemen, we'll move on to the third question. I'm sorry?
Mr. Bialicki.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bialicki, would you like any rebuttal on that?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you for covering me on that. All right, the third question. Westbrook schools rank number 44 out of 130 in the state, evaluated by niche.com. With a low student-to-teacher ratio of only 7-to-1, the schools were built with a capacity for 1,427 students, and enrollment 10 years ago was 966. However, enrollment continues to decline, reaching 664 currently, and the Board of Education expects enrollment in grades 5 through 12 to continue shrinking through the 2025 through 2026 based on those currently enrolled. While the Board of Ed budget has risen 28% over the last 10 years, non-education town spending has risen 13%. The Board of Education budget consumes 59% of the town's annual spending, which works out to a high cost of $27,459 per student, compared to an average of $20,325 statewide. Mr. Chantilly, you have the first attempt at this.
I think there's more.
There is. I'm sorry. Yes, my apologies again.
Long question.
Larger Old Saybrook schools rank number 27 and have 527 more students than Westbrook, a comparable student-teacher ratio, and spend $23,124 per student, 16% less than Westbrook, while offering more subjects and sports. Our town currently already shares some school programs with Old Saybrook. What options would you propose to reduce cost per pupil while maintaining quality education? Yes, Mr. Chantilly, please.
Well, I'd first like to say, as a parent of a first grader, I've had a great experience with the schools. Principal Rose does a great job at DZ Ingraham. I think that the best way to reduce the cost per student is to work towards increasing the number of students, mainly through affordable housing, so the younger generation can afford to stay and live in Westbrook and raise a family. And I do support other ways of, sharing services. I think, though, the first thing we need to do is look at sharing services within our own town. We could share services with a financial director and, my realm, IT. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chantilly. Mr. Bialicki?
Thank you. And there was a question in the end that basically said, what options? Is that correct, that you would propose?
Yes.
Okay. So, first and foremost, I believe that there needs to be meetings with the Board of Education and the Board of Finance to talk exclusively about the problems each are facing with the enrollment and with the economic development with our town. I believe the Board of Selectmen should be brought in on those conversations. And as time goes on, even the Economic Development Committee should be brought in on that. Transportation is an issue, when you begin to look at some of the plans that have been discussed for our students. However, we have taken on a very unique front in our school at the present time of dealing with the budget on a whole different level. The administration, the Board of Education, they're looking at the declining enrollment, and they're coming up with rationales on how to deal with that without cutting programs at the present time. School is being very proactive in this area. They began in partnerships in sports in 5 different areas at the present time. We're partnershiping with Old Lyme, we're partnershiping with Old Saybrook, we're doing ice hockey with 3 other towns, we're doing gymnastics with another town. That's opening up a door for us to begin to look at other ways that we possibly could begin to share programs. As first selectman, I would embrace the concept of sharing programs, that our school would promote and that our board would look at. Certainly our budget was passed with only a 1% increase on the education front, and it was a 96% positive vote last year, by the town. But I believe economic development could certainly bring down our PPE, and that's what we need, and that's why all the groups have to come together. As far as maintaining quality, as the niche report recommended or indicated, we are rated in Middlesex County number 2 safest school district in Middlesex County. We are also rated number 3 best schools in Middlesex County. We have an A for academics. So basically, transparency and bringing groups together is what I stand for, and I promise you that we can work at developing a very good program together and keeping our school district the way we want it.
Thank you, Mr. Bialicki. Mr. Hall?
I agree with Mr. Bialicki's last 4 or 5 points that Westbrook has a very good school system. Westbrook turns out kids that go to very good colleges and have very good backgrounds and do very well in those colleges and beyond in their careers. First of all, I'll say that the Board of Selectmen has very little input over the Board of Ed, or very little control. The Board of Finance has some control over that, but it's mostly the Board of Ed. This declining enrollment is something that every town in the area is struggling with. Every town around here, the enrollments are way down. Some towns are even closing schools, physical buildings, and getting rid of staff. I don't think we've reached that point yet. The superintendent's done a good job, I think, of cutting staff by attrition and moving some things around. I support regional sports and some other regional ideas, but I'm not so sure I would support regionalizing the whole high school. I think that's a little extreme at this point, but I do support regional services. I know we've taken steps in the last several years to keep some of our special ed students in district and hire teachers for them. It's cost effective rather than outplacing. So I think the Board of Ed has handled this fairly well and exceedingly well compared to some other towns in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Campbell?
As I said in my opening statements, I served on the Board of Education for 6 years. The numbers were different, the issues were the same. One of the big issues that we tried to do as a board was to share services as much as possible with the Board of Selectmen. Not always possible because they're just two different entities, but certainly we are the same town. We need to work together as much as possible. As Mr. Hall had said, the Board of Ed budget is the purview of the Board of Education. And I must say they've done a very good job. Not only have they opened up, as Mr. Bielicki said, some opportunities for, we've got ice hockey, which we've never had before, which is great. But they've also, I believe, added a whole bunch of STEM classes this year. One of our employees is a senior in high school. He's very excited about this stuff. I think it's great. And I've worked closely, my wife and I have worked closely with Leslie Carson, which is working with the kids, not necessarily just one track, many different opportunities. And I had 5 or 6 students in my shop, and we were explaining the business of running about entrepreneurship. So we're going to support the Board of Education as much as possible and open up any avenues as possible. They do a very good job, and you know, we should thank them for it.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. We'll open up for rebuttals. Mr. Chantilly?
No rebuttal. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bielicki?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Hall?
I'm good as well.
And Mr. Campbell?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to question number 4. Given the resignation of Eric Knapp, our Planning and Zoning Development Coordinator, will you specify in the required qualifications for his replacement an individual with experience in coastal resiliency work, as well as the other 2 key initiatives of the POCD? And this one will start with Mr. Bielicki.
Thank you. The Planning, Zoning, and Development Coordinator, I took a look at the job posting the other day. It's due, I believe, on October 15th of 21. In the job description, there is a quote, under the duties that indicates administers the municipal coastal area management program in coordination with DEEP. Now, I have a concern about one person being able to carry out not only this one area, but the areas that are just so involved within this posting. When I looked at the number of duties, I stopped at 50 of the responsibilities, and I could have gone on to probably read about 100 responsibilities that this person is going to have. I counted about 1,000 words, you know, it's about 5,000 characters, and I'm saying, how is one person going to do all this and then still manage all the grants that need to be done to follow through with what is necessary, you know, to follow up on this particular area? I support coastal resiliency work for this person to come in with expertise, as well as in improving drainage and raising roads and so forth. But I just have question on whether or not, under the present situation, that that has been posted if the individual is going to be able to handle it and do everything that is going to be required of them. Just take a look, at the posting online, and you'll see what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bialecki. Mr. Hall?
To answer that part of the question, yes, I support the planner being very involved in coastal resiliency. That's a critical aspect of that job. To talk about the planner's job more in general, the Planning, Zoning, and Economic Development Coordinator is primarily the zoning enforcement officer, and that person is interviewed and hired by the Zoning Commission, not the Board of Selectmen, with input from the Planning Commission. So currently, the ball is in their court to find someone to do all of this. Now, in the past, we've combined some of those positions when the need wasn't there for certain aspects of that job, and the job description got pushed together. So I think depending on what the applicant pool is, if we find a Superman to do all this, fine. If we don't, it may be time for us to look at splitting this job back apart. And I've always said that when we had meetings to consolidate these jobs, we need to constantly address them, and if things change, we need to come back, split some things out, and maybe hire more personnel. That's my public record. That's been on the minutes of every meeting we've had about this. So that's an office that needs to change as things change in Westbrook. I mean, no one has a crystal ball to know what's going to happen in the future, but we have to address what's in front of us, and I think it might be time to readdress that position and that job description.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, I'd just like to second what Mr. Hall has said. If it is a job that's too big for one person, then we may have to get two people. As the Board of Selectmen, we need to work in conjunction with the Zoning Commission and the Planning Commission, and to assist them and perhaps let them have some understanding of what our future planning is, which may help guide them in what they're looking for that position. But ultimately, it is their position that they interview. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Chantilly?
Like was said, I think coastal resiliency is important, and I think that it's pretty evident that there's not one person that could do this job. Since the town planner left, a lot of that work fell on the Planning Commission, a lot of, and they got a lot done, but there was a lot more that could have been done. So I would definitely look into splitting this position. I know Eric Knapp being on the zoning board, I think he did a great job, but he is quoted in the paper when he was asked about applying for grants. He said, "I neither have the time or expertise to do it." And that is what's holding back a lot of these POCD initiatives going forward. I had a discussion with the chair of the Planning Commission, Marilyn Ozel, and according to the Planning Commission, at the rate that we are funding our sidewalk project, it is going to take 80 years to complete. So I think applying for grants and making sure that we have the proper staff for planning is of the utmost importance for the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chantilly. Rebuttals, if you so choose. Mr. Hall?
I would add one thing about sidewalks. We do have an active grant application in for a federal grant for approximately $900,000 to do sidewalks from around the area of the Mulvey Center all the way to the Clinton Town line. So we do apply for grants. We fund a small amount every year for sidewalk maintenance, which I know the town crew is currently fixing the sidewalks on Seaside. So we don't ignore sidewalks, and we have a major grant application out for a major component to build that long sidewalk of approximately 1.5 miles. So we do apply for grants, and sidewalks are important and a priority.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Campbell?
No.
Okay. Mr. Chantilly?
No, we're
No?
Thank you.
And Mr. Bialecki?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next question. The town's net grand list, the total value of taxable real estate, has essentially been flat since 2011 at $1.2 billion, and a reevaluation is due for next year's budget. While the mill rate determining property taxes has been relatively stable in recent years, one route to keeping the mill rate stable is to attract more businesses and real estate development to town. What methods, if any, would you suggest to do so? And we'll start with Mr. Hall.
Well, first of all, let me point out, I disagree a little bit with the premise in that question. Economic development has not been flat in Westbrook. The Lee Company has built in the last 5 years, 2 100,000 square foot buildings in this town, which has added a significant amount to the grand list. And we've gone through a reval in that time, so of course the numbers are going to change. So let's compare apples to apples and recognize that we have had a lot of economic development in this town with somewhere around, I want to say 170 building permit applications in the last year. Besides these few major projects, we've had the Middlesex Health Facility in the last 5 or 6 years come to Westbrook. We've had a number of things come to Westbrook. Yes, the downtown still needs some attention, but we've had some other major projects that have added to our tax base. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, we're running on primarily 3 things. We're running on maintaining the fiscal conservatism, and we're going to make sure we take care of the town's resources. Also, hopefully, we're going to deal with public safety. And the third one is the town center. And what we are hoping to do is work with the different commissions that have been working on the town center for a long time, and come up with a plan where we can have some reasonable improvements, working with the commissions, working with the current business owners, working with potential business owners to come in. It is a comprehensive plan, and it's not just one that has just one issue that needs a resolution. So that's something that John and I will absolutely work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Chantilly.
I think the fact that the grand list has been flat over the last decade is attests to the lack of vision that the leadership has had over that time. We need to invest in our infrastructure so we can help businesses come to town and those that are in town. My number 1 priority would be the community septic system. You know, it can't be done by cutting corners. We're going to end up spending more money, wasting money, building something smaller that won't bring business to town and won't increase tax revenues. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chantilly. Mr. Bialicki.
Thank you. So the question, what methods, if any, would you suggest? Well, economic development is a primary concern of mine, certainly, moving into this position. And I believe that the first selectman of Westbrook needs to be a champion with all this. I like thinking out of the box. And thinking out of the box comes to mind to have an economic development tour, or an economic fair, if you would like to call it, to invite people from all over the state of Connecticut that are looking to invest in business, that are looking to relocate, they're looking to start business, to stretch the limits outside Connecticut. Invite all these people into Westbrook. Partner with a real estate agent. Have that real estate agent do tours throughout the entire town, showing everyone what we have, taking suggestions and seeing what we can offer. Listening is very important in order to bring people into this market. I'd have a dedicated webpage for sure. A web page that would list all of the for lease and all for the for sale businesses and commercial property in our town. And I'd research organizations. Quickly, I came up with 3 myself. Advanced Connecticut, for instance, they're helping, or they're offering to move economic development along to help towns. The Connecticut Economic Center, their resources for business loans, for emergency business loans. The Connecticut Main Street, they talk about bringing downtown to life, and certainly we can use that. But as first selectman, what I would do is I would bring people together from other areas into our town to see where we need to make improvements and how we can definitely motivate new businesses for our development and for our tax bases. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bielicki. Will there be any rebuttal, Mr. Hall?
I'd like to just add another point. I'm very encouraged when a number of our top 10 taxpayers in town decide to reinvest in town. And one thing I didn't mention before, Water's Edge has had a project that's been approved and ready for construction, 32 new housing units right here in town. I think that's huge when you have your top 10 taxpayers, Lee Company, Water's Edge, marinas, and so on, reinvesting their money in Westbrook because they believe in Westbrook. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, I would just like to add that, again, as I said in my opening statements, my wife and I have been downtown, and we've been running a business for over 3 years. We're now in our 4th year. So as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I will be able to show people that it is possible and show people that there is a need and a desire. People want to come downtown, and we will do what is necessary to bring the people together to make that happen. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chantilly?
Yes, I'd just like to add that, what I do every day is to look at business processes and make them more efficient. And I know that there's been some changes in the land use department, but I really think it needs another look. A look with what we call the user in mind, the applicant, and streamline that process of getting through the land use office and getting their projects approved.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chantilly. Mr. Bielicki?
I'm set, thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next question. The sidewalk project is ongoing, and we understand construction will continue along the Boston Post Road. Do residents know exactly the distance where the sidewalks would go? The busy sidewalks along a number of areas in town are in deplorable condition with cracks, bumps, and uneven pavement. There is a great need to improve the sidewalks, which may result in serious falls. Is this a consideration for future budget inclusion? And we'll start with Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, as Mr. Hall had mentioned, we are going forward to pursue more grants for sidewalks. Then there is also the responsibility of the town to take care of the budgets, because not all the sidewalks, not all of them are going to be covered by any grants. I do believe that there is repairs going on as we speak with Seaside Avenue, so I believe that the town has at least handled some of these situations. When John and I went door to door, especially around the high school, sidewalks are a big issue, and we're very sensitive to that and understanding of it. So the easy answer is it is absolutely a future budget consideration and inclusion. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Bielicki?
Well, we do have an approved sidewalk plan in progress. However, I feel that it has not been adequately funded, along the way. To date, we really haven't put a dent in the project for our sidewalks. I read a letter recently that indicated at the present funding rate, it would take over 20 years to complete this project unless we change things. We need to add money annually to our capital fund, just like we do for dredging and police vehicles and so forth. That's really important. And all of our new sidewalks, we need a proactive plan in place, to repair them, before they get to the point of disrepair. And I know that the next phase is Bellstone to Osprey, which is in the south side, of our town, of Route 1. And certainly we need to work with our Public Works on a scoring system. Our Public Works has a scoring system for our roads. We need that scoring system as well for all our sidewalks, so we can give it the proper priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bielicki. Mr. Chantilly?
I'd like to say that, I fully support the sidewalk project. This is my favorite question because it sounds like a technical question to a computer geek. So the approved plan is available on the website. It calls for an increase of a building 29,311 feet for a total system of 123,737 feet. I'd like to, thank the Planning Commission and the Chair, Marilyn Ozel, for initiating this project and pushing it forward. I could say that in my professional career that any project that I do for information technology always includes maintenance, repairs, support. So I fully believe whatever you build, you have to maintain. You can't let it crumble. So I would definitely fund it adequately so we don't have crumbling sidewalks. Thank you.
Mr. Chantilly. Mr. Hall.
So we have put money in sidewalks every year, and every year we get another section done. So we have, in the last year and a half, completed the link from the high school down to the town center. I know the plan is to complete the link from I-95 up 153 and over to the YMCA. That's a large section. That's going to take quite a bit of money. We also have applied for and received a grant to finish from the train station down to the town and replace all the decrepit sidewalks in front of Westbrook Auto all the way over to Christie's. Tried to come up with a solution in front of the package store where people park on the sidewalk, park in the street, whatever. I think it's a great improvement there. But that was done with grant money. So we use grant money to improve the sidewalks where we can. We do some of our own tax money and capital money. But sidewalks are a huge outlay. And if we're going to outlay, $1 million, that's going to raise taxes significantly. Even though we get grants, it's still, some of that money's got to come out of Westbrook. So I think we've done pretty well. We worked with Ms. Ozels and the Planning Commission every year when we budget and talk about which sections we're doing and how much money we're going to spend, and we try to implement the plan as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Time for rebuttal, and I will remind you, gentlemen, I know we're towards the end of the questions, but if you would, I get a tap on my shoulder a couple times. If you turn the microphone, it would help with the TV station. Okay. Thank you. Rebuttal, we'll go with Mr. Campbell.
No rebuttal.
Okay, and Mr. Białowicki?
No rebuttal.
Mr. Chantilly?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, and Sir, Mr. Hall?
Let's go to the next question.
Okay. Next question. The proposed community center appears to be a duplication of the venues already available in town, with outside places such as the pickleball courts and the bocce court, the school buildings, library, senior center, and the YMCA. The Parks and Recreation Department sponsors all sorts of activities for young and old. Why do we need another expensive building for such purposes? And what is your opinion of the proposed community center? And this one, we will start with Mr. Chantilly.
Well, I do believe a community center would enhance the lives of the residents. I think that the survey was pretty clear in that 64% of the residents said they didn't support a tax increase and 18% were unsure. Personally, I feel like there's been so many other capital improvements that have been underfunded over the years that there's many that are higher priority. I feel like the only way to move forward would be to look at partnering with another town like Clinton, who's just starting out with their program, or the Y, or existing space in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Białowicki? And if you turn the microphone, sir, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
There's been talk about our community center for probably the last 11 years, and more recently at our ARPA meetings, they've estimated $2 million, at a minimum cost without even looking at the operating cost at this time. But before we consider building, I really believe we need to seriously exhaust all our options. The question I have, is how can we utilize our current structures in town, school buildings and related properties for this use? I'm not so invested when someone says no, that no is no. I believe that when someone says no, that means the first selectman takes a stand and leads discussion with these groups to see why and still bring up reasons how. As first selectman, I think that it's necessary to meet with the school administration, the YMCA, and also to ally with the neighboring towns as Clinton and Old Saybrook, because I believe Clinton is considering a community center, and they might even look in as a possible partnership with someone else. At the end of the day, no matter what action we take, it needs to go to a town referendum, and we need to look at an up or down vote. It's too bad we haven't had a referendum up to now, but the final say needs to rest with the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bialicki. Mr. Hall.
I agree with a lot of the points that Mr. Bialicki made here. Actually, it's been 12 years the community idea has been floated around, because when I first got on the Board of Selectmen, this was an issue. I asked at that point to get some cost estimates and some estimates for what the ongoing costs were going to be to maintain the facility and operate it. And this year was the first time those were presented to us. And even now, they're only rough estimates. I appreciate the survey. I've studied the survey intensively with Great Blue. Note that the lack of support for people to pay for it with their taxes is there. We do have the opportunity here for some grants that may be in place already for some of the costs, but I'm not convinced we need this right away. And even if we do, it's 3 to 4 years away from construction. And I agree with Mr. Bialicki, this needs to be an initiative that's passed on by the town voters and approved before we even think about going much farther.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you. I am in agreement with pretty much what everybody has said. It's not a slam dunk that we need a community center, especially with the lack of enthusiasm to pay for it. Everybody seems to think that we can use it, but we don't want to have to pay for it. Anything of this expense would end up going out to a referendum anyways, so that's not something that we would make as a decision as a board. That would just be expected. So I think we need to work with the other agencies, and I'd like to see exactly a plan for what are we missing, what are the gaps that a community center would fill that Westbrook needs. Then we can look at what we have, and are there agencies, facilities out there to help fill those gaps. And if not, then perhaps a community center is the way to go. I'm not sure we have all the information that we need right now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Rebuttal on this question? Mr. Chantilly?
No rebuttal, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bialicki?
I just wanted to add that I think that what everyone was saying is accurate when you're looking at what we have and what we don't have, and I think what we need to do is find that balance of needs between what we need and what we want. You know, so I agree that we need to really look at that, you know, amongst our population.
Mr. Hall? I'm good. And Mr. Campbell?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, thank you. At this time, we'll move for questions from the audience with the following rules. When you are recognized, please give your name before beginning to speak. We'll try to bring a microphone to you so we can hear the questions. Questionnaires will have 30 seconds to pose a question to any candidate, but make no statements. Questions only. Discretion of the moderator. All candidates will have 1 minute for a response to each question. As time runs short, we will stop the questions. Are there any members of the audience that would like to pose a question to one or two of the candidates? I'm playing the Jeopardy music in my head, you know. All right, we'll now give each candidate 1 minute for closing remarks, speaking in the same order that they started. Mr. Bialicki.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the Council of Beaches, Oxford Academy, the audience, Valley Shore Community TV. I'd like to close that we discussed a lot tonight of what we need to do and what has to be done. And these led to more questions of things that we need to research in order to get things done. So I'm saying we need an activated selectman. We need a champion of transparency. We need someone with listening skills, communication skills, the ability to interact with others, and to have the perseverance to find solutions, of course, when they come to roadblocks. No individual can handle this on their own. You know, they have to have a growth mindset. They have to be able to embrace change in the community for the 21st century and overcome all the hurdles that they're going to come across. If elected, I'll prove this in me. I'll work with all of you to bring Westbrook forward, programs, progress, and in a pathway to reveal success for our 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bialicki. Mr. Hall?
Thank you.
Microphone, please. Thank you.
I feel that I am the most qualified candidate to be Westbrook's next first selectman. I have dedicated most of my adult life to giving my time and talents to the town, both through the town government as well as many civic organizations. I have served my church for over 45 years in almost every capacity, including Sunday school teacher, deacon, trustee, and moderator. I will continue to serve the townspeople as I always have by listening to all the concerns and points of view and making prudent, thoughtful decisions to move the town forward. I have always worked in a bipartisan manner with every member on every board and committee that I have served to reach consensus while always keeping in mind what is best for Westbrook. I am asking for your support on November 2nd. I want to thank Bonnie and Lindsay for loving and supporting me in this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Chantilly?
I'd also like to thank the Council of Beaches and Valley Shore Community TV and the Oxford Academy for putting this on. And everyone who's came to watch and watch online and who will watch the recordings. All I have is that I hope that everyone can walk away with you know, a better sense of the candidates and to make an informed decision on November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chantilly. Mr. Campbell?
Thank you. Council of Beaches, I appreciate it. Valley Shore, your job is invaluable. Oxford, for this wonderful facility. I'd also like to thank the other members on these tables, because it's not easy, trust me, being up here, watching so many people behind a mask, wondering if you're going to fumble or... Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'd like to thank my wife, because she's letting me run, so thank you very much. Trust me, she's letting me. I'm asking for your vote because I have access to many different people. I'm going to be able to bring a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different people. It's not just going to be the South Beach people. It's not going to be up north. It's not just going to be the parents. It's not just going to be the summer people. I have the business experience, and John Hall and I are the team that will lead the town of Westbrook. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Now, please join me in a round of applause for the candidates. In closing, we also want to thank the Oxford Academy for the use of this room and Valley Shore Community Television for televising this event. Most importantly, we want to thank you for your attendance, interest, and questions, and remind you once again to vote on November 2nd. Thank you. Have a good evening.